It's a brand new week. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this very fresh week where we have 5 opportunities to have 55 minutes of current and relevant business talks. I'm Ini John Mekwa, and I'm here to do business with you, beginning from what's happening in the global space. And we would, of course, start from oil, where OPEC Plus will raise oil output from November by 137,000 barrels per day. This is said yesterday, opting for the same fairly modest monthly increase as it did in October amidst persistent worries over a looming supply glut. So the group, which comprises the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and Russia and some smaller producers, they've increased their oil output target by more than 2.7 million barrels per day this year, equating to about 2.5% of a global demand. So let's look at the numbers now, what that has done. It's brought green to the market, more than 1% for Brent, 1.29%, and the price has settled at $65.36 a barrel. WTI follows suit, 1.36% in the green, and the price is at $61.70 a barrel. And oil prices rose about 1% today after that announcement. Crude Brent futures closed up 1.29%. Still in the oil space, Dangote refinery has expressed profound appreciation to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for his timely intervention that led to the resolution of the recent industrial dispute involving the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENGASSAN. In a statement issued by Dangote, the management of the refinery praised the coordinated efforts of several top government officials and security chiefs, including the National Security Advisor, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, the Director General of Department of State Services, Mr. Adeola Toyin Ajayi, and the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Mr. Mohammed, whose actions, they say, helped to restore calm and stability in the energy sector. The company also commended the Ministers of Labour, Finance and Economic Planning, among others, for working tirelessly to prevent a nationwide disruption in fuel supply. It further thanks Nigerians for their overwhelming support during the standoff, pledging continued dedication to the nation's economic growth, workers' welfare, and uninterrupted production of petroleum products. With that, let's see how the market fared at the close of trade last week. We see that the market, that's Nigeria's stock market, sustained the 143,000 level since like midweek last week. That's when that started, and it was sustained to the end. The market closed positive more than 1%, and equity cap 91.135% at the close of trade last week. The sectors that thrived most was, well, predictably, banking. Banking was the most active. Insurance has gone to the other side. Of course, we do remember a couple of months ago, insurance was the baby of the market, but now it seems that investor sentiment has flipped towards that. So we see a huge drop right there. Oil and gas yesterday, we talked about Aradel last week. After that divestment, it seems that has even attracted more investors to Aradel. So we saw it driving the oil and gas sector hugely last week. So we saw that sector gained 5.68% at the close of trade. Industrial goods, of course, really did try. Dangote Sugar was a major driver there most of last week. We see that closing positive. And then outside the market, we see economic think tank, that's the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises, CPP, is asking for urgent reforms to protect investors and employers in Nigeria, describing them as the lifeblood of the economy whose rights remain inadequately safeguarded. In a new report titled Protecting Investors and Employers, a National Policy Imperative, the CPP stresses that while workers benefit from strong legal protections, those who create jobs and mobilize capital face mounting risks from arbitrary regulation, union disruptions, and policy instability. The firm warns that unrestrained strikes and policy unpredictability could aggravate production shutdowns, capital flight, and job losses, weakening Nigeria's competitiveness and deterring both local and foreign investment. To address these challenges, the CPPE proposes a comprehensive investor and employer protection framework anchored on fairness, due process, and accountability. And then away from that, the Minister of Trade and Investment, Ms. Jumoke Oduwole, has asked for a practicable approach to harness the potential of Nigeria tech businesses for export to other African economies. She made this recommendation at the AFCFTA Digital Roundtable, which was in Lagos, with the theme Scaling Nigeria's Digital Services Across Africa. The events, which featured senior policymakers from Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, and South Africa, alongside innovators and private sector leaders, explored opportunities for Nigeria's digital services firms and startups.
We need to practicalize how our businesses, our tech businesses, can export their services across the continent. Under the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, we did a survey in April asking our tech ecosystem countries they want to export to, and they came up with 5 countries: Ghana, Kenya, Egypt, South Africa, and Rwanda. So we've invited the regulators here today for a roundtable to ask them what are the regulations, come and tell the Nigerian businesses. And so the Nigerian businesses are in the room now to understand what it's going to take for them to go into those markets. So it's very practical, how to help our businesses, handhold them to practicalize this. So it's not just a wish now. If you want to do business in Kenya, the Kenyan Central Bank is here, their regulators are here to tell Nigerian fintechs, for instance, what it's going to take.
All right, so now let's get into, we're still in the mood of that Independence Day speech. I'm sure you've seen a lot of reactions. I think the latest has been the defense coming from a special advisor to President Bola Tinubu, Dr. Tope Fashua, over the weekend. I wonder if you saw that, and he reeled out some of the gains and how some people are not happy about that and all of that. But let's get more perspectives on that. And of course, we have the movement of inflation. If you could have that slide, the movement of inflation since 2022, that was just before President Bola Tinubu came on. Up till now, we've seen the changes. Of course, we've seen 5 consecutive drop in inflation. That's what's celebrating. Even though Ghana has beaten us to it, Ghana is back to the single-digit inflation zone, but we are still doing double digits. And I think I did see an international body say we're going to do about 14% next year. So we are still on doing about double digits, obviously. We've seen GDP also grow also over the past years and quarter on quarter since President Bola Tinubu came on. We've seen the value of Naira stabilize. Whether you want to call it a gain or reduction, that's up to you. But at least we've seen the gap between the official and unofficial markets. We've seen that reduce drastically, and we've seen a level of stability and certainty, or certainly predictability, in the value of Naira. But what we haven't seen, however, has been the movement or the translation of these macroeconomic benefits or wins to the micro, that's touching the life of individuals. And so we see, when we talk about, for instance, the Nigeria's multidimensional poverty index, we still see that still high, because in 2022, 63% of the population were said to be poor by the World Bank. That's multidimensional poor, experiencing deprivation in health, in education, and living standards. By the time we moved to 2023, that was when President Bola Tinubu came into power or into office. The World Bank placed that at between 46 to 47%, affecting about 104 million Nigerians. By 2024, last year, World Bank placed it at about 54%, representing another increase. So while we see these very impressive macroeconomic numbers, it doesn't look like that's translating to the micro. And this year now, World Bank has said that about over 75% of rural Nigerians and 41.3% of urban Nigerians were living in poverty. But of course, we do remember that the president has told us that the worst is over. So do we say that after this period now, we will not see those numbers anymore? Well, we have have to dissect these issues. So right here in the Lagos studio, we have the Chief Executive Officer of RTC Advisory Services Limited, Mr. Kwemi Agbaje. Good morning, Mr. Agbaje. Thank you so much for...
A pleasure to be here.
And then in our Abuja studio, we have investment and economic development expert, Mr. Ogbonna Okuku, also joining us to discuss this. Mr. Okuku, good morning and welcome to the program.
All right, thank you so much for having me, Ini.
All right, let me start with you on your thoughts about the president's speech, especially that part where he said that the worst is over.
Okay, so the best way to look at it is, first things first, when programs are designed by government, when government decides that there's going to be a strategy to deliver on a particular economic structure. Now, one of the things that the government has been able to do is to, first of all, eliminate the fuel subsidy regime, and again to also restructure the foreign exchange market. So those two things definitely have been a big burden on our country, and those two major issues. There have been two major issues in our country, because before now we've been living in a bubble, because it would have been too difficult for anybody to know the actual worth of this country with those kind of things existing side by side. It's just like a pregnant woman with a very massive fibroid in the womb growing at the same time. So it would have been, is that the baby is going to get suffocated, or the woman loses her life. So we're getting to that place where it's either Nigeria collapses or the entire economy collapses. So I think yes, it was one of the most painful decisions that the present administration took, but I still believe that it's one of the best decisions, because that decision have led to us now having the level of stability we're having in our foreign exchange market. Two, then we now know we have a structure that will work, and then the subnationals are now receiving more money. So as against monies, those subsidies servicing a few, because it was just there servicing a few lifestyles, because it's only those that had large fleets of cars that were enjoying, and then those who were racketeering with the entire structure that were benefiting from it. But for now things have changed. We have enough liquidity to support the subnationals, to support government programs, to develop more infrastructure that is required, and then bring out programs that would help grow the economy. But nevertheless, that is not the end of it all, because that's the beginning. So for me, we have laid a foundation, and the president making that particular phrase means that yes, the worst days have passed. So we are now entering into that space where we will now begin to grow the economy. We will now begin to, grow the economy properly. So any growth you see will definitely translate to lives of people, into people's personal income, and then that would also, drive growth, actual growth in the economy in a very short time.
Yeah, Mr. Agbaje, I wonder if you agree with him and the president's phrase, and the fact that, or his perception that the economy is now stable, so growth is what
I completely agree with him, and I was going to start on exactly the same tone with which he started, which is that most people have this mindset of incremental change. So they thought that the government should come in and just make incremental change. But what President Tinubu did in 2023 was fundamental structural reforms. And when you avert disaster, tragedy, you may not appreciate it. The country was clearly, if you looked at our central bank with ways and means of maybe 30 trillion, at least 23 trillion, if you looked at our central bank with net foreign reserves of just $3 billion, if you looked at our NNPC with most of its production sold ahead of time, if you went back to the central bank and looked at obligations, foreign currency obligations in excess of $7 billion, the country, and even the fuel subsidy that people thought they were enjoying, was it paid for? Or were debts accumulating for fuel subsidies at the NNPC? So we were headed for disaster, bankruptcy, tragedy. And so ignorance is bliss. You know, when you are ignorant of the dangers around which you are treading, you may feel that everything is okay. But if you are interested in educating yourself, looking at the data, looking at the direction of things, you'll be grateful to this government for averting the tragedy, which would have resulted in more severe pain for our people. Imagine Nigeria's social situation as 2023 or even today, and compare if the country had gone into bankruptcy. And then there would have been, you think you have crime, you would have an explosion of instability. So I, based on all we know, and most Nigerians should know too, we averted tragedy, we carried out fundamental structural reforms. In my view, it is almost miraculous that in just 2 years, we have recovered to the extent to which we have. I don't need to churn out. President Tinubu did a good job of churning out the data. You've repeated some of them. So it's almost miraculous that we are where we are today. We have had recovery in virtually every indices of economic performance. Foreign exchange, inflation, growth, GDP, trade surpluses, all of that. And for those who say that these things are not yet translating to the people, yeah, maybe the data is not yet saying so, but the data will lag. If there is growth, if GDP growth is at 4.23, there's more production. There will be more employment. If inflation has declined from 30-something to 20%, there will be increasing. Yes, I do admit that we would like inflation to go down to single digit, but the burden of purchasing, of consumption will be improving. We know those things from economic principles. We know that GDP growth means more employment. We know that. We know that the declining inflation means the burden of consumption is reducing. We know that. We know that trade surpluses means our foreign balance of payments is improving to the benefit of our economy. We know that stabilization in the exchange rate means better planning for companies, better employment.
But how long, Mr. Agbaje, do we have to wait for this lag?
I would prefer we wait than that we had blundered into a tragedy. Like I said, I even think that the results we're already seeing are remarkable. Given the relative, when you make fundamental structural economic reforms, you wait, and we are beating, I think. I wrote recently that even the reforms of President Obasanjo, which he started from telecoms in 2001, which he went into banking and all of that, when did we get the World Bank? After like 6 years or 7 years of President Obasanjo. So let's understand the reality of structural reforms. If you want to make incremental changes and you tweak it and postpone the evil day, yes, you might go ahead thinking that things have gone well. But when you want to make fundamental reforms, yes, the pain may be more, but the rewards are greater. And I think that I'm impressed with the rewards so far.
Okay, so a major one, obviously, the subsidy removal. And Mr. Okuku there also brought it to attention how this has made more revenue available to government, especially the subnationals, the local government, the state government. But then how much of that have really gone to the lives of the people, the welfare of the people? We've seen multinational, multidimensional poverty there not improving. How much of it?
I must say that I do not totally disagree. I think our subnationals, in particular, I mean, we have all these things we are really now that the president has done and the outcomes that we're seeing. But unfortunately, the president is not the class captain of governors. He's not the supervisor of governors. The supervisor of governors is their state houses of assembly and the political system in the states and in the local government. Unfortunately, we have work to do in establishing the pillars of accountability at the subnational level. And that's not I think that one of the things that from experience we can suggest that perhaps we may consider at the federal level is publishing how much we gave you, and just monthly publishing everything, so that then your systems can then, the systems established at the state level, the elites of the state, the elders of the state, the political system in the state, the voters of the state, and their House of Assembly.
I guess, as you said, the voters, but people have to be interested to follow up. It doesn't seem like a lot of Nigerians are interested in following up.
That's a shame. That would be a shame. And again, that may be one of the prizes of building an accountable democratic system. I think we managed to keep attention at the federal level, and because of politics and competition for power, we managed to get the federal government to be at least responsive and accountable. And we got the president coming on here and telling us, this is my scorecard. I don't think we've managed to do the same at the state levels to the extent possible. To be fair, we've done some. We did those. I mean, I can point to one or two examples. Otoge in Kwara State was a manifestation of democratic power. And we might cite some other examples. But I think generally we can agree that at the state level, we need a little bit more political governance accountability.
Now, let me come to Mr. Okuku. Mr. Okuku, both at the sub-nationals and at the nationals, there are talks that we would have even seen more gains of these reforms if issues like leakages in government were dealt with. Cost of governance is another one, and then those leakages, they are really sapping off some of those gains that the people would have experienced.
Now, so looking at it holistically, there are two things that are very key here. One is we must have that confluence, the confluence economic development plan. So that means each of the subnationals and the federal government must sit together, and then we have a plan, looking at, and that plan would, look at, areas of comparative advantage for each of the states, and then see how they can develop thus. That number two, the citizenry has always been a very big problem, because I always say from a state of anarchy to a centralized state, you need to have, those set of rules. You must have leadership, and then that's the people who manage the rules. And then the most important part is actually the citizenry. And the key factor is the well-informed citizenry. Now, the citizens have to understand that at this time, is no more just the federal government providing, doing all the basic infrastructure for you. Everybody's talking about the president or the government at the center. Now, more monies are being released. Yes, my colleague there said, yes, we need to put it out there how much each of the states is, states how much they are receiving. Now, if the subnationals are receiving funds and then they are not working with those funds, so there has to be some level of accountability and efficiency within the subnationals. So for that to actually happen, so the citizens of the state, because if you say state house, if you leave it just to the State House of Assembly members alone, it probably might be a bit difficult, because most of them don't have so much, autonomy to be able to, sit the governors down or sit the subnational leaders down to get them to do the right thing. So, but I think that some level of arm twisting will come from the citizen when their expectations. So we need to expand the scope of the knowledge scope for the subnational people, the citizens at the subnational, to know that if you're not getting some of these basic amenities, you need to also, focus your attention on your governor, on your local government chairman, because the reason why I believe the president said it in his speech, why he decided to make those funds available, because for him, he's been a governor, so he understands the rudiments and then the capacity and the leverage that a governor has if he or she wants to develop, his local entity. So for me, those expectations has to increase, and then again, I also have a little way I look at some of these things, because I think one of the biggest problems we have in Africa is we expect people to do the right thing. Rather, in other climes, I see that they make people do the right thing. So we need to design strategies and structures that will make the subnationals adhere to strict rules of engagement as regards economic development of the state, infrastructure development, and then making available opportunities for the people within their ecosystem to grow and then be able to develop, in the same line. Because it has to also, it happens in all sphere. When it comes to agricultural development, you need to look at things that have to, there are roads that must be constructed, roads that will support raw material supply strategy. So you look at your industrial layout, those development has to actually, be anchored around the economic development plan of those states. I say this all the time. Everybody talks about China. The entire 62% of buttons used globally comes from a small local government in China. So that means we don't have an excuse. You must not do everything. So if you find your area of comparative advantage, things that you can do within your state, there has to be a drive, and then you connect it to what's happening at the federal level, and then we have a robust financial engineering, and then we'll be able to get some of the subnationals to begin to work effectively.
And Mr. Kuku, more revenue is expected with the new tax law that's supposed to start in January, because what they're supposed to do is supposed to expand the tax net and all of that. And that means more revenue. And it would have been more reassuring if alongside the new tax law, there's also something that will compel, the efficient use of this extra revenue that will be coming.
Now, research has also shown. I like the point. You just came in with. There's a study has shown that countries that that have more people in their tax net tends to have better democracy and development. Why is that? Even the Bible says it, where a man's treasure is, that's where his heart is. It's been a case of everybody says, oh, they are eating our money. Right? No, our money is different from my money. So when people begin to pay taxes, when the people begin to adhere to, paying taxes, so it becomes my money. So you pay attention to what's going on. Because, you see election days, I'm not saying that our electoral process is the best. But, is the participation of the citizenry that would actually, force or make sure, is that, it's beyond advocacy, but, that will put pressure on the system to correct itself. So I am happy with the new tax law, because it's going to expand the tax net. It's going to have more people pay taxes, and that will also make every single Nigerian pay more attention. Because when monies are taken from you, you know that money is taken from you. You will feel it more, and then you want to see what that money is going for. That's when you begin to ask questions, because it is your money that is going out.
All right. Well, we do hope that will bring more commitment. But Mr. Agbaje, let's switch a bit. And in spite of this good record, and of course we've had applause from IMF, World Bank, even though they did emphasize the need for social welfare programs and all of that. And we see that this just came out, I think, over the weekend, to report that Nigeria is the third largest recipient of U.S. aid at $875 million last year, 2024. So the first is Democratic Republic of Congo and then Ethiopia. And one would have thought Nigeria shouldn't be in this category. We're a big country. We have a lot of potentials. We're making more money now and all of that. Why should we still be named at the top of this USA?
First of all, let's settle one point. Just taking from, I think the evidence of the success of Nigeria's macroeconomic reforms, it should no longer be a subject of debate. I hope that people take their anchor from people like Bayo Ogunlesi, Akim Bello Osage, Chukwuma Soludo, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the IMF, the World Bank. I hope that we don't take our economic anchor from politics. I think the evidence is now overwhelming and compelling. Now, there are legacy issues. We've gotten hooks, and I'm not a fan of aid, by the way. There's no evidence. I remember the now old book by Dambisa Moyo around aid. It's questionable. And part of why it is questionable that aid is the way to develop any economy ties back to what the other Jaga in Abuja just said. there's no accountability around aid. It didn't come from you, it's a gift. It's a gift passed through government officials and NGOs in both systems in which there's now corruption. There's no record of any economy in the world that transformed itself because people were giving them aid. So let us build the foundations of our own economy. Let us take the bitter pills that we have to swallow to make our economy more productive, to change. You know, it's about incentives. What we have done is altering the incentive structure for participants in the Nigerian economy. Now the incentives are pay your taxes. The incentives are see what you can export because of the exchange rate system, already translating into increased exports, reduced imports, and better balance of payments. The incentives are to get into production rather than go to the central bank, beg MFLA or whoever for some dollars, or get into a racketeering petrol subsidy scheme. If you want to be wealthy, the incentives are increasingly limited to finding something to do, like build a refinery, like build a petrochemical plant, like build something, and look for where you can find a large market. So let's complete the process of altering the incentive structures around getting wealthy in Nigeria, from rent seeking to producing something. That's what the reforms are about, bottom line. And then alter some systems like taxation, help do some things to help our people, like creating a housing and mortgage system, like creating a sustainable pension system, like and I think the government is doing all of that. You are hearing a lot about reforms in pensions, you are hearing a lot about education loans, credits, consumption loans. Those are part of the system. I also agree, by the way, that we must continue to focus. It's a continuous focus. The problems of poverty, inequality in Nigeria are deeper than something you will tweak over a 2-year period and then it will reverse. So we need, at least in my view, a decade plus of continuous looking at the social situation and saying, what can we change here? What can we do to help our people? What can we do to mitigate? I think the government is finally on that track, but there's a long way to go.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Agbaje, right there for sharing your thoughts. Mr. Kwame Agbaje is the Chief Executive Officer of RTC Advisory Services Limited. Thank you so much for your views. And also from our Abuja studio, Investments and Economic Development expert, Mr. Ogona Okuku, thank you so much for sharing your time and thoughts with us this morning.
All right, thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's take a break now. When we come back, another sector of the economy will be our focus. Please stay with us. Welcome back. And now let's talk about maritime. And we have right here, we know there's been some regulations, freight forwarders, and we talk about the issue of ports and activities around the ports. and around our import and export. We have the Registrar and Chief Executive Officer of Council on Regulations and Freight Forwarders right here in the studio, Dr. Kingsley Igwe. Dr. Igwe, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So it's a season of reforms and changes. We just concluded a conversation on that. We know that before now it wasn't a very pleasant experience. You know, even when we had our Biodogu and all of that, there were lots of complaints.
Yeah.
But would you say these reforms that we're seeing, especially from the federal government, are you feeling it in your sector, in the maritime sector?
Yes, we are feeling it. As a matter of fact, we are part of it. Yeah, being a regulator, so I'm part of those who formulate the policies, that brings about the reforms that you experience today in the industry. So, good thing, we have a new direction that we are charting. Okay, so let me just take it in perspective, because if I have to concentrate on everything maritime, it's too vast, it's too wide. So this is on the perspective of freight forwarding and logistics services, So as it affects the port, thank God we have a president who has the willpower to cause positive changes. And that is why you can see the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy piloting the affairs of the maritime industry. So credit to Mr. President on that, and even the minister who has given us a roadmap for the marine and the blue economy, with the advent of the marine and blue economy policy that we are working on, we have completed today. So all of this reform is as a result of this policy that has been developed and now implementing the contents of that policy to the port development initiative that is being piloted by the Nigerian Port Authority. It also brings about part of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to dwell more on the greater part of it, which is National Single Window, which is an initiative of the president. This National Single Window has been on since 2014 and has not been implemented. But this is the first time we are seeing significant change and effort towards implementing it. As a matter of fact, it is built to be fully launched by first quarter of 2026. So all of these reforms are translating even to numbers at the ports and even the
Already,
maritime.
do we see the numbers?
Yes. As a matter of fact, you can search it by yourself. The port call is increasing in terms of the number of vessels that visit our ports is increasing. We have more cargo traffic now, improving than before. And it translates to even the revenue. Most times you see the revenue that comes from the custom due to duty collections and all of that. So these reforms are the reasons why you have those numbers coming up. And to God be the glory, they're actually improving the economy of Nigeria.
Are we looking at reforms that could decongest Lagos? You know, that's another conversation and restriction that a lot of people complain about. Everything is here. And also infrastructural development, even at the ports, the sea, you know, dredging and all of that. Do we see these reforms spreading to these areas?
Yes, exactly. It's part of the initiative, like I mentioned, the ports expansion and development by Nigerian Port Authority. All of this talks about improving the infrastructure of the ports that we have. Lagos Port, in Lagos Port in Lagos here you have different port terminals. The Apapa, the Tinkan, the Lekki Deep Sea Port that has come to stay. Then down to the east, there's so much plan going on in order to
Do we have timelines, especially outside Lagos? Because I know you would agree with me that the concentration has been so much in Lagos, and we've seen how it has hampered logistical movement, you know, of goods and all of that. So do we have a really intentional talks and perhaps timeline for expanding or reactivating some of those ports outside Lagos?
Okay, so let me draw your attention to just the the just concluded Maritime Week we had last week, the World Maritime Week. So there's a whole lot of discussion that went around. So one of it was the implementation of the national policy on marine and blue economy that was passed. And the minister looked at financing projects to develop port terminals that will enhance cargo flow. And that speaks to decongesting the port. Now, at the moment, Lagos, the way our logistic industry is structured is such that Lagos looks like the national load center for both inflow and outflow goods. So, but at the policy has decentralized that concentration in Lagos and is trying to come up with new ports development around the eastern region and complemented with dry ports on the hinterland, such as the spread of inland container depot within within the Nigerian states. So at the moment we have more than 14 of them in the north.
I know there's one active in Kano.
Yes, that is the Dala.
Yes.
Dala, yes. So it's very, very active. So now most of those inland container depot or dry port, as you may call it, complement the effort of the coastal ports. Okay. So now what it tends to achieve is to reduce concentration in most of this area. Now Lagos is already saturated, and that's why you see some of these inland container depot coming up, such that they will serve as both origin and destination ports, just like the seaports are serving. So by that, there will be deliberate reduction in the congestion problems we have at the seaports that you talk about.
All right, we look forward to it, and we look forward to more infrastructural development. I mean, we know that there's supposed to be a rail that takes products from the ports, to other parts of the country. We hope to hear more of that, and perhaps we'll have you another time on the program to help us explain timelines to it, because after the policy is launched next year, as you said, then we need to know when we will start seeing the implementation of the policy.
I would also like you to think about the national single window, because that is the industry talk, the talk in the industry at the moment, because everybody needs to key into the national single window in order to be able to reduce the bottleneck at the port as well. By the time that the national single window comes up, even you, maybe you have your own small business somewhere, you don't depend on the conventional agent to move your cargo out of the port. You can do it at the comfort of your office. So this is an area that Nigerians should look out for as well, because it's almost coming to stay.
And we hope that it will also encourage more exports, not just imports.
Yes, the national single window actually is for both import and export processing, such that people can be able to process their import permit, export permit, and also launch their custom declaration online through the national single window, assessing all agencies that they ordinarily go to their offices, just like one-stop shop.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kingsley Igwe, Registrar and Chief Executive Officer, Council for the Regulations of Freight Forwarders. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's take a short break. When we come back, Ladi will be here. News from around the world. Please stay with us. That's right. It's Global News Time with Ladi Williams. Ladi?
Yeah, great to be here. A brand new week and a lot of expectations again coming this week. Well, let's get a check on what to expect in the global economy. We're expecting a couple of U.S. companies. They'll be releasing their results for the week. That's the third quarter of 2025. Investors will be looking out there for companies like Constellation Brands, Delta Airlines, and PepsiCo. Also, Mexico, their consumer confidence, UK S&P Global Construction PMI. We're expecting that also then Tuesday this week. US trade data, the monthly balance of exports minus imports, including goods and services. That's a core release. The last published figure, that was about $78.3 billion deficit for July 2025. We also have Germany factory orders expected this week. Then for Wednesday, we have the FOMC meeting minutes for the September 16th to 17th, 2025 meeting. That's scheduled for release this Wednesday about 2 p.m. Eastern time. We see the Fed cut rates about 25 basis points. That's the first cut in 2025. The minutes may reveal how much internal resistance there was. Some wanted a deeper cut, and the balance between the hawks and the doves right there in the FOMC. And in Tokyo, Japanese equities climbed to record highs following the ruling party's decision to nominate a new pro-business leader, injecting fresh optimism into markets burdened by sluggish growth and regional headwinds. The move is seen as a potential pivot towards more growth-oriented policies, spurring gains across key sectors. Sanaya Takeichi, who has held senior government roles, including Minister for Economic Security and Internal Affairs. She's known for her support of higher government spending and lower borrowing costs. She's also a longtime admirer of former UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and her free market approach to economics. So we're seeing the impact there on the currency market and stocks. All right, let's look at the automobile industry now. Aston Martin, Lagonda Global Holdings PLC, they said they now expect total wholesale volumes for 2025 to fall by mid to high single-digit percentage compared with 2024, citing weaker demand in North America and Asia Pacific and continued tariff pressures there. Yeah, the tariffs again. The British luxury car maker delivered about 1,430 wholesale units in the third quarter of 2025, below the 1,641 units in the same period last year and below prior guidance that volumes would be broadly similar. Then Tesla Inc., they released teasers for an October 7 event where the company is expected to reveal a new product. The company released 2 short videos on social media platform X, one featuring a spinning wheel or turbine, the other featuring the illuminated headlights of a vehicle, touting the date October 7. The tease comes amid growing focus on affordable models from the electric vehicle maker as it struggles with declining sales, an aging lineup, and heightened competition from Chinese players. So I guess we'll be looking out for the impact there. But let's pivot to another matter now. With the expiration of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, as AGOA, many African exporters, especially in agriculture and light manufacturing, they could lose preferential access to the U.S. market, potentially undermining decades of progress in export diversification. Joining us now for this conversation, we have Professor Olabisi Kinkube, is the Purdy Crawford Chair in Business Law and Associate Professor of the Schulich School of Law at Dalhousie University in Canada. Great to have you on the show, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, Ladi. Good to join you.
Yeah, so in your opinion, which African economies and sectors are likely to be hit hardest by the removal of AGOA privileges, and how might they, respond, in your opinion, or how should they be responding now?
Thank you very much. In terms of, AGOA, as you rightly said, said the stone, it's a 25-year bipartisan legislation, and it's given African markets, preferential access to U.S. economies. And so over the period of 25 years, countries like Kenya, South Africa, Lesotho, Ghana, Nigeria have all been very active in terms of particular types of exports to the U.S. market. If you pick Kenya, for example, Kenya's economy in terms of textile products, apparels has been tapped. A whole ecosystem has been built around that particular economy, not just in Kenya, but also in South Africa and Lesotho. You would recollect that when the U.S. Tariffs came up some months ago, and Lesotho got 50%, we were all saying that's going to cripple the economy of such small Southern African country. But apart from Kenya, South Africa, and Lesotho, Nigeria as a country is also a participant. Nigeria exports oil quite significantly to the U.S. That's a sector that will have significant impact also with the expiration of September 30th, 2025 of the AGOA. But there's slim hope that is being reported that there might yet be a year's extension. No confirmation of that has been issued by the U.S. Trade Commission or body. Now, moving on and thinking beyond, these impacts on these countries, what we have to think about is, the specific implications that they have. Number one is that there will be significant job losses. Apparel production and export, or oil, all the products that these countries trade under AGOA are suddenly going to disappear. That means, people are not going to be able to work because they are now going to have to pay the tariffs that are applicable under the Trump tariff, right? So they don't have any preference any longer. And this will be in addition to, what they do under the most favored nation principle of the World Trade Organization. So African countries...
Right, yeah, definitely so much to expect there. And I'm wondering how this expiry of AGOA will accelerate or reverse efforts, towards industrialization. We're talking about Africa, industrializing. We also want, Africa to trade with Africa. So I'm wondering, is that the silver bullet, in case this expiry stays and we don't get a renewal? If Africa trades with Africa, is that a silver bullet, in your opinion?
Well, there's a slim opportunity here to retool how we trade as countries. Trading with each other, certainly under the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, is one possibility. But as you know, in as much as that is now gradually kicking off under the Guided Trade Initiative regime, there's still a lot to be done with the rules of origin, which is now only recently, as I gather recently, seem to have been concluded. So there is opportunity there, but that will take time. But there is also the fact that there is the need to scale up beyond the export of primary products. We do have to climb up, the global value chain and think about additional means of, scaling up within the country so that the true export within African countries can be really meaningful.
All right, definitely. We'll be looking out to see how we take advantage or get more disadvantage, from this. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was great having your perspective. That's Professor Olabisi Akungbe, Purdy Crawford Chair in Business Law and Associate Professor at the Shoreditch School of Law at Dalhousie University in Canada. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that's it on the program. But just before we go, I'd like to tell you the good news that the NGX is still sustaining the green color. We're building on the 143,000 level. As of this morning, 0.05% in the green. Hopefully that will be sustained. But Ladi will give you more details at 1:30 during Business Incorporated. Please join him then. But for me now, it's bye-bye. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.